All right, so our scouts report the enemy is near Manassas Junction, and we're preparing for battle. We're facing the Army of the Potomac under Benjamin F. Cheatham with 5,000 men and 5 guns, and we should have about 10,000 in our force. There's a bunch of different force composition reports you can read. We're not going to go into that right now. So what we're going to do is we're going to get right into the fight. So all of the armies on the battle map will start at a entry point onto the battle. You can see these little arrows. Um, so we have a blue arrow here that's going basically as an entry point going to back to Washington and Alexandria. There's a few entry points down here that are coming from different locations on the map. These are all controlled by the Confederacy, of course, right now. So yeah, depending on the direction that you come into a certain area, you will come in at a different point on the map. So this is a historic map of the Manassas Junction area, Bull Run. So we're actually going to be fighting the first battle of the war, where the first significant fight of the war did occur historically. So this will be fun. So when you start off, you can deploy your forces within this blue area. This is basically the area that your army or your scouts may have been stationed basically at the start. And we're going to be moving our forces sort of as far forward as we can so that we can avoid significant delays in getting to the battle. So these 2 points over here are strategic locations. You see Matthews Hill and I think this is Henry Hill. These are some strategic locations on the map that the game has assigned as sort of like capture points. Now I've turned off continuous victory points off, so when we capture them, if we do, we're only going to really get a small morale benefit once from each of these, but the enemy will probably be defending them. We don't know exactly where the enemy is. They could deploy anywhere on the map, but most likely they will try to deploy defensively near those points. So I'm going to send my forces down the turnpike here, this Warrenton Turnpike. I'll probably send a few forces flanking on both the north and the south of this point too, because I want to make sure that I can cut off or scout any enemy forces that are moving in that area. I don't know for a fact that they're going to be defensively down here, although they have a smaller force, so they really should be. So looking at my force composition again, we can look at our order of battle. We have Winfield Scott, and we've got this 1st Division of Artillery. We've got a division of some cavalry under this Runyon. And then we also have all of our infantry. We've got 4 different brigades of infantry here of various sizes and compositions. So I'm going to put our infantry divisions at the front of the column, along with their commander, so they can get right into the action. I'm going to put our artillery in the rear, so they're going to be coming up pretty close behind. Make sure that they're all in line formation as well. Okay, and then I will have our cavalry units. Probably going to send them on a bit of a flanking mission. Now, I know that the enemy is most likely to be up here, but I don't know that for a fact. So what I'm probably going to do is have them follow in with the main force, and then I'm going to split them up and send some scouts this way, and then I'm going to send some this way and see if we can spot the enemy in these directions so that we can keep our main infantry force concentrated. So for now, I'm just going to start them off up front with everybody else in the same column. We don't have a big enough force that we can really split up too significantly at this point. So with no other actions to take, I'm going to hit play and we're going to get started. Speed up time a little bit. Takes a long time for units to move across the map as they are kind of moving in real time. You can see it's 16:30 military time here, so it's about 5 o'clock in the afternoon. If it gets too late in the day, um, darkness will overtake the battlefield, and basically we'll have to redeploy in the morning. The enemy will get to redeploy as well. So my goal here with this is to hopefully just with our superior numbers flank and overwhelm the enemy wherever they're defending. So they might be up here in one of these locations, they might be somewhere else. What I don't want to have happen is I don't want to end up getting stuck at a choke point. So I don't have a whole lot of intelligence ahead of me right now. So I don't know where they are, but if they're on the other side of a bridge crossing, I will not want to directly attack across that because I may take more casualties than I want to, and yeah, there's a potential that I lose. Although I really hope that that's not the case. So we'll get notifications and dispatches in the upper corner, and I see that pontoons have been assembled and are supporting the crossing of our troops. And I just saw them right here. Here's a pontoon crossing. There's probably some other places as well. There's another one. Here's another one too. So that's very useful. I didn't realize this force had the ability to deploy pontoons, but they are deployed usually before the start of the battle. So that's interesting. I believe it might be because General Winfield Scott, I believe he has some, let's see, it doesn't show me here, but I think he has some experience as an engineer, and maybe just because he is an engineer, it lets us, create those pontoons in advance, or created those pontoons. Let's move up a little further here. I haven't spotted the enemy yet, so that's a little disconcerting. I'm going to get my cavalry going. I don't want to take any more time here. So I'm going to send these guys down with Sharp's carbines. And I'm going to send the 3rd Cavalry up north to just scout ahead of us. Now there is an actual scout function I can assign to these cavalry units later on, but since these are basically small groups at this point, I can't utilize this function until because I don't have enough manpower to split off a detachment for scouting. So I just basically need to use the entire force. That will become available later on once I research the cavalry reorganization reform. Okay, so I've got this cavalry element down here. Now I need to be careful that I don't split these guys too far away because individual units take orders from their commanders. So this commander of this division is under Runyon, and this 3rd Cavalry is very close. So if I wanted to send an order to this cavalry unit, it's going to get its order directly from the commander very quickly, and they can redeploy or whatever they need to do. But this one is going to take a while. So if I was to reorder this U.S. cavalry group to a different location, it's going to take a long time for that order to get down here. So they're basically just going to be where they are for now, and unfortunately that's the way it is. But I'm going to send them to the top of this hill so that they can maybe get a better view of the surroundings, and we'll hopefully spot if there's any enemies in that area. I'm going to use these cavalry units up here, and I'm going to send them probably over Poplar Ford here, and hopefully I'll be able to spot what I'm looking for, which is the enemy. Now I'm not going to deploy any guns until I can see the enemy. And I think I can risk a crossing because I don't spot anyone in this immediate area. So if I can get across the river, I should be fine because I can use my superior numbers of these various different brigades to fight a much smaller force. As long as I can avoid a choke point, which it looks like we should be able to do. I think we're going to run into the close of night, though, with nightfall coming. We may not be able to fight this battle until tomorrow morning. Okay, we're sending troops across the river. Speeding up time a little bit here. I still haven't... Okay, you know what? We've spotted our first force, enemy formation. This is Hampton's Legion under Van Dorn. So they're moving towards the center of this junction. I think this is Manassas Junction right here. It's where these two big roads converge. And it looks like this is where they're going to try to head us off. So once I cross this river, I'm going to quickly redeploy my infantry. I'm also going to try to get our artillery across, if I can, so that they can engage in this battle. Now, the more ground that I take now, probably the more aerial I'll have to redeploy overnight, which is going to be coming very soon here because you can see it's already very dark. It's getting towards the end of the day, and soldiers just typically did not fight at night during this war. They did occasionally, but it's pretty infrequent. All right, so we're getting close to the enemy here, and I don't know if we're going to have any fighting this night, but I'm going to redeploy them in a double line formation. Now, I could use a single line, which I might change to at some point, but I like to use double line because it gives you some ability to redeploy reserves. If your front line breaks down, you can fill a gap, or you can also send units left or right to flank. So now I'm going to reorganize those troops, and I'm going to send them up to try to take the top of this hill, which is where they're deploying on Henry Hill. You can now see Ewell's brigade, approximately 2,000 strength, as well as Jones' brigade of 2,000 strength behind him. And then there's, of course, this Hampton's Legion and a small battery of 5 guns. So they're going to be deploying, it looks like, on this hill to stop us. We'll see where they actually end up. Interesting that they didn't start here. They probably had the ability, the AI had the ability to start on this hill, but they didn't. Okay, so our forces are redeploying into double line formation here. All right. As expected, it is the end of the day. It's too dark to keep fighting or to fight this battle tonight. So we're going to click continue. We'll redeploy. So our troops have been resupplied. You can see the percentage that they were resupplied. So none of these troops have used any ammo. So basically nothing was taken from supplies. We have no challenges there. So that's great. All right, so I have our redeployed forces from overnight, and we have our infantry brigades moving up. Doesn't look like they've moved too far. I can kind of spot them. I'm using this cavalry force over here as a scout. I'm going to move up to this building over by Matthews Hill, and we're just going to keep an eye on these guys. So they've set up behind a line of defensive works here. That looks like a line of fences and also in this creek line to defend us, and they're probably unintentionally using a reverse slope defense, so we can't fire on them with our artillery from here. And in order to engage them, we either have to come all the way around the hill or we need to go up and down where all of their different units can fire up at our units as they come over this ridge. So again, I doubt that this is intentional by the AI, but maybe it's unintentionally genius. So in true Union style, we're going to attack right up the front, because what else would we do? We will try to attack slightly off center, actually, so that we are hitting them on one side of the line, and then we're going to try to kind of wrap and envelop, hopefully on their left, which is our right over here. So that's the plan. You can see that we have one brigade, which is already feuding with a commander. You can see this little icon here shows that there's a feud, and what would you know? It's Colonel William T. Sherman. When a when a commander or an officer is feuding, that means that they're basically going to not always follow orders directly. So they might just take their own initiative and either defend or attack on their own, or flank or move as they see fit. So I'm going to speed up time here, and I'm going to redeploy our artillery so that hopefully we can actually have them do something useful during this battle, which they're clearly not going to be shooting, because they can't shoot over this hill. There's true line of sight. So I'm going to re-limber them back up, and then I'm going to redeploy this entire force. I could send them out separately, but I'm going to redeploy this entire force over to this hill where I can fire down under their lines. So hopefully this will be successful. Now cavalry at the start of the game is not very strong. You have basically understrength units. They're just cavalry regiments versus infantry brigades, so they're going to be massively outgunned if they try to directly take on any of these larger brigades of infantry. Now, they will have a lot of opportunities to fight artillery, but I don't want to charge them in right away because they're just so close to this infantry, and cavalry breaks very quickly in this game at the start of the war until they have more experience. So I don't want to, squander them early on. I'm going to deploy them in a single line formation, so at least they can deploy forward, though. We'll send this Palmer, which is the other cavalry unit, off to the left to again try to scout this area and hopefully just provide a flank that we can use here. So our infantry units are moving up, but again, not very effectively. So we're going to put our main force in the front. Don't know why it's trying to deploy in that formation. Okay, so our first units are moving up here. It looks like it's going to be this militia brigade under Baker. That's probably going to get into range first. I want to probably wait a second here until at least I have a second brigade up ready to fight. I don't want to attack one at a time, because if I do, they're going to have the defender's advantage, and we can see that they're in cover, again behind rocks in this creek bed, and then the rest of these are in fence cover. Cover is not uniform in the game, so certain things like tree cover provides a lot less cover than something like fences and earthworks. And you can have much stronger cover than that if you have defensive trenches built, which we don't at this time. So really need to get these guys into position, but they are not listening very well. So Get this division commander up here, this David Hunter, into the middle. If I move him up closer, it means the orders will not have to travel as far. And I'll put Winfield Scott, who's our division commander, or I'm sorry, the army commander, a little closer as well, so that just it decreases the amount of time that it'll take for our orders to get to the field. All right, so I have our first units moving up. We have 3rd Cavalry. I don't know what they're trying to do. I do not want them to do that, though. I'm going to order them to dismount, leave their horses, and then I'm going to use them basically as a holding force on this side. But I probably will utilize them a little bit more for right now. I just don't want them to ride up into the enemy at this point. I will use them once we are engaging the enemy and holding them down. I will probably use them as a flanking force. It's usually the best use for cavalry. And I would like to get our artillery into position, but not sure how quickly that's going to take, or how long it's going to take to get them there. So we've taken one of our objectives, which is Matthews Hill. Oh, jeez. See, this command, I accidentally gave this division a command to move somewhere, and when you give a division an entire command, it basically sends all of their subordinate units to one location. It's very frustrating. So basically, this cavalry unit tried to path down this road and basically just ran right into this enemy force. Now, interestingly, looks like in the process of doing so, they routed, or it's hard to tell, but at least broke this this one artillery force. They did have some effect. Broken. They're not going to be participating probably in the rest of the battle. They've taken 87 losses, and now they're just retreating, basically. But the enemy has at least lost some of their artillery, and they're repositioning some of their infantry, so we should be able to take advantage of this. We're going to move up all of our infantry units without wasting any further time, and we're just going to try to outflank them. Our artillery may not get into position in time to actually fight, but that's okay. Looks like Sherman's feud is ended, so he's now taking orders again. All right, we have our first engagement. So our militia brigade is taking fire from the Wheels brigade, which is stronger. We also have our 1st brigade in contact as well. Send this 4th brigade, 7,900 units, probably our strongest brigade so far. We're going to send them on to basically cut off these units here, which is the Hampton Legion and the U.S. brigade surrounding them for 2 seconds. You can see that because they have a smaller force, they're getting very easily boxed in here. And unless they're able to break one of these units quickly, they're going to get surrounded on multiple sides. This unit is actually struggling a little bit. Just because of so they've already they're falling back. Oh, they're something called commander initiative in this game. Commanders can take some actions while they're on the ship. That's necessary. So in this case, they move to cover without me telling them. I decided not to use any skirmishers. I had the ability to deploy skirmishers. I'm not going to do that. Just need to see should be able to route our position. Probably. So I'm going to send Sherman places high up this brigade. These guys are falling back. As expected, these guys are panicked, they're falling back, they're broken. They may rejoin, but they've taken a few losses. So early in the war, inexperienced and untrained troops will break much faster than later. But as they gain more experience in battle, and also sense of specializations and perks to them, they will become harder and harder to break. So by the end of the war, you will have crack veteran divisions that will fight basically to the death. Have taken 70 to 80% casualties, and this is pretty much very far later in the war. Alright, the enemy is retreating. So that was as expected, not much of a challenge because we outnumbered them quite a lot. But we're going to utilize the time that we have here until the battle ends to try to inflict as many casualties as we can, capture as many prisoners as we can. We'll move these guys at double time so we can get them quickly. We're going to get them up to the battle. So we're falling back to very disruptions. I'd like to capture those guns. They've actually sent out detachments from since their artillery unit was destroyed early on, quite accidentally, they sent out detachments from their infantry to hold that artillery. So, trying to recover So we're going to change them to short-range fighting so that they can inflict the maximum amount of casualties, but I really want to capture those guns. I may order them to charge in. Not necessary in this case. Alright, so whenever the enemy decides to retreat, we see that there's a timer. It's basically a retreat time, so that gives us this amount of time to react and fight their forces. Now, they're not necessarily completely in retreat at this point, so they can fight to some extent, unless they become shattered, which they are here. So we can still take casualties, technically, here. But I'm going to speed this up because I believe there's not much left to do. We're just going to chase them off the board, and they're going to retreat back the way they came. Alright, we have a glorious victory at Manassas Junction. The Army of the Potomac is fleeing in panic. We can see a dispatch from the commander, from Winfield Scott, basically reporting how the battle went. So the enemy reportedly suffered Around 1,100 casualties, 149 killed, 233 captured. The rest would be wounded. So just because we see that number of casualties doesn't mean they're all dead, and doesn't mean they're all out of the fight completely. So those that are killed clearly are, and those that are captured are taken directly out of their force, and those go to our prison camps if we have them constructed. But anyone who's wounded goes back into a pool of wounded soldiers, and depending on if they have hospitals set up or what the medical treatment is available for the Army, some percentage of those may come back to fight later. Some will not. Our casualties, on the other hand, we had only 74 killed, but we had 209 missing, and the rest wounded. So we'll also see missing occur, and missing could mean that they deserted. It could mean that they were maybe captured and we didn't see that, or that they were killed and their body wasn't found. So wounded for missing for all intents and purposes means they're out of the action. We captured 620 rifles, so rifles in good working order. That's great, and 3 guns. 220 enemies, soldiers were captured and taken to prisoner of war camps. So that's excellent. So we won our first battle, and if we zoom in here, we can see that. Let's see if we can turn this on. Front lines will start to shift back as this army retreats. Enemy army retreats towards their nearest available friendly location. They're suffering some rearguard actions too, so you can pursue them. But we're actually just going to capture this area. We're going to capture Alexandria. And then we're going to use the Department of Pennsylvania to capture Harper's Ferry and Winchester. Now, we've defeated one small army, but the vast majority of Confederate forces are not here. They're elsewhere, and that's a little bit concerning to me. I can see that we have 2 potential armies here of sizable strength that are moving up in northern West Virginia. At least that's the last known location for them. So I'm a little concerned by that. I'm going to turn on scouting for the Department of the Ohio and for the Department of Pennsylvania. I may actually redirect the Department of Pennsylvania to try to intercept these forces. And I'm going to reassign some of these units from the Harrisburg muster ground that are now available and put them in the Department of the Ohio so that we can counter whatever forces are over here, while the rest of our army tries to move south towards Richmond. Alright, so I think we're going to leave it at that for today. We've won our first victory, even though it was a small one, and we're going to pick up next time. Hopefully we'll be capitalizing on our gains and carrying the war towards the south. See you next time, folks.